But what's concerning now is that what you're seeing with Elon Musk is the darkest of the dark money to Elon Musk and Donald Trump's sort of interests, right? And because that line has been blurred.
The line between wealth and political power has always been paper thin in American politics, but we've reached a whole new level of dystopian absurdity. Remember the quaint old days when billionaires were content with their mega yachts and private islands? Now they're literally shopping for presidents like kids in a candy store, except this candy store sells democracy. Take the latest episode in this endless political soap opera. Elon Musk, fresh from turning Twitter into a dumpster fire, decided to throw $200 million at Trump's super PAC. Let that sink in for a moment. The guy who couldn't keep a social media platform running smoothly now wants to play co-president with his $2 trillion federal budget slashing fantasies. It's like watching someone who crashed their bicycle offering advice on how to fly a jumbo jet. The whole situation reads like a badly written political satire, except we're living it. These two oversized egos are engaged in late-night tweet storms that could crash the stock market or start an international incident.
The whole country is a fire festival right now, and Elon Musk is soaking the mattresses. It is so much worse than I think anyone imagined it might be. Elon and his musketeers, you probably heard, they sent an email to all federal employees ordering them to list 5 things they did at work last week. Trump loved this idea. He said it was genius, and he said anyone who didn't respond to the email would be fired or semi-fired, which, what if that was his catchphrase on The Apprentice? Meatloaf, you're fired or semi-fired. But then, just a few hours later, the Office of Personnel Management said responding to the email, it was not mandatory, it was voluntary, and a number of Trump's other departments like the FBI, the Justice Department, the Defense and State Department specifically told their people, do not respond to this email. In other words, thank you, Doge, our government is finally running efficiently. What a job. So then today, there were more than 3 million federal workers right now spinning in circles because they don't know what to do.
Trump's swooning admiration for Musk is straight out of a teenage fan club president meeting their idol. There's nobody like you in the world, he gushes, making everyone within earshot reach for the nearest barf bag. What's truly nauseating isn't just the spectacle of 2 billionaires playing government like it's a board game. It's the blatant corruption masquerading as legitimate political discourse. When the richest man in the world drops $200 million into a political war chest, he's not buying friendship, he's purchasing policy. That's not a donation, it's an investment with expected returns. The terrifying part is how normalized this has become. Breaking news, billionaire buys government influence.
Money of the richest man in the world, absent the extraordinary pressure cooker of Fox News and all the other.
And that's really the scary part that hopefully the senators will get to the bottom of.
Oh wait, that's just another Tuesday in modern America. We're watching democracy transform into an exclusive club where membership costs billions and the entrance fee keeps climbing. Musk isn't just backing Trump, he's already worming his way into potential policy decisions about federal regulations and investments. It's like letting a fox guard the henhouse, except this fox has a flamethrower and an addiction to social media. The conflict of interest is so massive it can probably be seen from one of Musk's rockets. Yet here we are, watching 2 grown men with the emotional maturity of sugar rush toddlers potentially steering the fate of the nation. They're essentially playing superhero dress-up, except instead of plastic capes, they're wearing real power, and their game of pretend has real consequences for millions of Americans. This isn't just about Trump and Musk anymore.
Today, our celebrity president made his plan perfectly clear.
Can you clarify, hopefully once and for all, what your expectations are with this email to federal employees? What are you going to use that information for? And do you see it as voluntary, like OPM has said, or mandatory?
Yeah, well, it's somewhat voluntary, but it's also, if you don't answer, I guess you get fired. What it really what it is do people exist?
Okay, now I understand. It's somewhat voluntary, but if you don't respond, he guesses you get fired. Thanks for clearing that up. I think it might be time to give the planet to the apes, because we're finished. These poor federal workers. I mean, really, can you imagine? These federal workers are as confused as Elon's kids were when they realized their father named them after a phone number. And maybe the craziest part of all of it is Elon Musk has no official authority to fire anyone. He's not an elected official. He wasn't appointed. He wasn't confirmed. Who knew you could fire people at a place you don't even work?
It's about a system so fundamentally broken that we've normalized billionaires basically purchasing presidential candidates like they're collecting rare Pokemon cards. The dark money flowing through American politics has gone from a concerning drip to a full-blown tsunami, and somehow we're all just expected to keep swimming. Meanwhile, the real issues facing ordinary Americans, healthcare, living wages, affordable housing, get buried under an avalanche of tweets, memes, and ego-driven power plays. We're witnessing the transformation of American democracy into a billionaire's playground, complete with nuclear launch codes as party favors. And the most absurd part? We're all just watching it happen, one outrageous headline at a time.
Of something people hold dear and believe to be true, that project seems near complete.
NASA become Elon Musk at the end of the day, because that's what he wants. He wants to be able to take control of these parts of government.
Think about this. We're basically watching someone who builds rockets try to redesign our entire government system. It's like having a tech CEO write the rules for how your neighborhood works. And this transformation is happening at breakneck speed, literally as fast as one of those fancy electric cars can zoom down the highway. What we're witnessing is a pretty dramatic shift in how our country operates. We've gone from a system where regular folks had a say to one, where billionaires seem to be calling more and more of the shots.
Accepted to some extent the influence of the wealthy and business leaders. That has also blurred the distinctions and that checks and balances that we talk about.
And here's the worrying part. This new system doesn't come with any safety features or backup plans. It's kind of like getting into a car without seat belts or airbags and hoping for the best. A bunch of people who study this stuff have been pointing out something interesting. This alliance between our space-obsessed tech billionaire and the former president is pushing us toward running the country like some Silicon Valley startup. You know how those apps on your phone sometimes crash and need constant updates? That's apparently the new model for government they're aiming for. And honestly, that should make us all a bit nervous. We've already started accepting that wealthy business leaders have an outsized influence on our politics. The traditional boundaries between public service and private interests are getting pretty blurry. But hold on to your hats, because there's more coming down the pipeline. This isn't just casual conversation between two billionaires about making things more efficient. There's a bigger plan in motion, and it's probably gonna hit everyone's wallet pretty hard. You might want to grab some snacks and maybe a calculator, because we're about to watch quite a show.
But what's concerning now is that what you're seeing with Elon Musk is the darkest of the dark money to Elon Musk and Donald Trump's sort of interests, right? And because that line has been blurred.
Picture this, taxes vanishing faster than a toupee in a windstorm, while certain bank accounts grow bigger than some egos we know, and that's saying something. Our tech-savvy friend has decided the government needs what he calls a transformation. We're talking about cutting spending by $2 trillion. That's more zeros than you can count on both hands, more than most of us will see in several lifetimes. To put it in perspective, it's even more zeros than the number of failed business ventures in certain real estate portfolios. Here's where it gets really concerning. We're seeing some of the most secretive money movements flowing between these powerful figures. When they talk about temporary hardships for regular Americans, well, let's just say temporary can be as reliable as your ex's promise to stay friends, or as brief as certain political terms in office. And just imagine what might happen if we start running essential services like hospitals on the same technology that powers electric cars. It's enough to make anyone nervous about where this road leads.
Twitter, for example, if you are casually observing government and politics, you're looking at Twitter, you don't know what's him. There is no accountability there. We don't know where exactly he's spending his money.
Imagine calling emergency services only to hear, "We apologize for the life-threatening delay, but our ambulances are still waiting for their charging stations to get installed." This gives you a taste of where things might be heading. Picture walking into an elementary school where coding boot camps have replaced basic reading lessons, and little Timmy's book report includes a mandatory rocket launch protocol. The speed at which essential public services are being dismantled reminds me of those reality TV eliminations. Quick, dramatic, and without much explanation. In this real-world game of Monopoly, the stakes aren't plastic houses and fake money. We're talking about healthcare, education, and social services. Speaking of games, let's talk about a certain social media platform. If you're trying to keep track of what's happening in government through that lens, good luck. It's like trying to read a book in a dark room. There's zero transparency about where money flows or how decisions are made. Just like someone who already owns the prime properties in Monopoly, certain individuals are accumulating unprecedented control over our public infrastructure. But don't worry, they say, everything will be run like a business. Need emergency medical transport? That'll be $500. Plus dynamic pricing during peak emergency hours. Want your kids to learn their ABCs? There's a subscription service for that, just $9.99 monthly, auto renewal required. Here's the thing that experts keep trying to tell us. Running a government isn't like managing a tech startup. Shocking, right? Providing essential services to millions of citizens is slightly more complex than selling luxury electric vehicles to wealthy early adopters. But hey, if history has taught us anything about aggressive cost-cutting measures, just ask Greece how that worked out for them.
I might try it at Chipotle sometime just to see what happens. And then, because there isn't enough dumb happening, we have the Klan mom, Marjorie Taylor Greene, who doesn't seem to think federal workers have any value at all.
Those are not real jobs producing federal revenue. Those jobs are paid for by the American tax people. Federal employees do not deserve their jobs. Federal employees do not deserve their paychecks.
Spoiler, not great, unless you're a fan of social upheaval and widespread poverty. But don't stress too much. After all, the person in charge of this government makeover is the same genius who managed to decrease a social media company's value by 80%. What could possibly go wrong? It's like putting a pyromaniac in charge of a fireworks factory. Sure to be spectacular, though perhaps not in the way we'd hope. So fellow citizens, fasten your seatbelts for the ride on the Efficiency Express. Next stop, Optimization City, population, whoever can afford the ticket. Don't worry if you can't. There's always Mars. Isn't it fascinating how we've come full circle? Remember when the American dream was about white picket fences and prosperity for all, not just escaping to another planet? The real kicker here is how we've shifted from a chicken in every pot to a coding boot camp in every kindergarten. We're watching the transformation of public services into profit centers, where even basic necessities come with a premium price tag and a terms of service agreement. It's quite a departure from the original vision of government services, isn't it? This isn't just about budget cuts or modernization. It's about fundamentally changing how we think about public services and civic responsibility. When we start treating citizens like customers and basic rights like premium features, we might want to pause and consider where this road leads. After all, a government's success shouldn't be measured in quarterly earnings reports or stock prices, but in the well-being of all its citizens, not just the ones who can afford the premium citizenship package.
Wait, aren't you a federal employee? You're a congressperson. I gotta tell you something. I can't believe Kermit the Frog goes out with her. It really... Thousands of employees have been let go at national parks. Thousands of park rangers have been laid off or resigned in protest. You know how Smokey Bear says only you can prevent forest fires? It's about to be true.
Remember when the American dream felt achievable? Now it seems we've traded in that vision for something that looks more like a reality show for billionaires, complete with golden fixtures and breakfast spreads that cost more than most people's monthly rent. The land of opportunity has morphed into what you might call the billionaire's exclusive club, where the price of admission includes not just your life savings, but apparently your dignity too. Looking back, it's almost funny how we used to think those late-night presidential social media rants were as bad as things could get.
Employees are describing Donald Trump's massive layoffs as devastating, cruel, and surreal. Shanice Mundell is one of those workers fired in the name of cost cutting. A single mom told the New York Times, quote, "I was on the track to do what I set out to do, but now everything is all upside down." She's worried how she'll be able to provide for her children and afford her mortgage. Mundell was fired simply because she had been in her position for less than a year, which is known as probationary period for most federal employees. And Shanice Mundell.
Talk about underestimating what was coming. We're watching something much more concerning unfold. Wealthy individuals treating our government like their personal playground. You know how people say, like a bull in a china shop? Well, imagine something even more chaotic. Picture a toddler with unlimited energy, armed with a sledgehammer, let loose in that china shop. Now replace that toddler with certain tech billionaires and that china shop with our entire economic system. Starting to get the picture. But here's where the story takes an interesting turn. We're not actually trapped in this narrative. Remember that old saying about controlling our own destiny? Someone wise apparently said that before social media turned everything upside down. Well, maybe they were onto something, even if they couldn't have predicted our current situation. Here's a radical thought. What if we could reimagine the American dream, not as something reserved for those born with trust funds or those who can afford to launch cars into space?
Yeah, they sent us a Teams message and told us to click on this message and join this meeting. So we joined the meeting at 2 o'clock. We sat on hold at the meeting until 2:30. There was a lady on the Teams call telling us that if we had a union, we should contact our union rep and get them on the phone. And another lady said, well, we were told we couldn't have any supervisors or anything on the call. And after, she said, well, we're all probably about to get fired anyway.
But as something achievable for regular folks, you know, the ones who actually make up most of America. What if success didn't require a platinum credit card or a billionaire parent? The real question isn't whether our system is working. That answer seems pretty clear when you look at who's benefiting. The real question is whether we're going to let this become our new normal. Are we really okay with public services being treated like luxury items with premium pricing?
So she said, I think you should get your union reps on the phone and turn on your cameras and let them know, and then everything went silent.
Do we want a society where basic rights come with a subscription fee? Think about it. We've gone from life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness to terms and conditions apply, premium membership required. It's like we're living in some bizarre app store version of democracy where every basic service has a freemium model. Want your street plowed after a snowstorm? That'll be extra. Need the fire department? Hope you've upgraded to the premium citizen package. But here's the thing, we're not powerless in this situation. Sure, it might feel like we're watching a particularly dystopian episode of a tech billionaire's pet project, but we still have a say in this story. The question is, who's ready to help write a different ending? Who's willing to imagine and work toward a version of America where success isn't measured by the size of your rocket ship or your social media following? Is anybody else seeing this? Is anyone else ready to push back against this reimagining of our society as a startup that only serves its premium users? Or are we all just gonna sit here waiting for the next system update that might finally fix all these bugs in our democracy? The power to change this situation is still in our hands. Metaphorically speaking, the device is definitely turned on. The real question is, what are we going to do with it?
I know a lot of people have been comparing Trump to Hitler lately, but there's some major differences between. For instance, Hitler was married to a woman who loved him.
They're poisoning the blood of our country.
It's sick. It's wrong. And the Republican Party is defending it.
You know, we've hit peak political absurdity when comparing modern American politics to historical fascism isn't even the most ridiculous part of our national conversation anymore. It's absolutely wild that we're sitting here in the 2020s watching a former president practically writing love letters to authoritarian legacies while everyone else is desperately trying to remember if this is what normal politics used to look like. Spoiler alert, it wasn't. The sheer audacity of the situation would be comedic if it weren't so deeply concerning. Here we are, decades after World War II, having to explain why admiring dictators might not be the best look for someone who once held the highest office in the land. Every living former president is probably getting treatment for chronic face palming at this point. Remember when presidents used to unanimously agree that Nazis were bad? Those were simpler times, weren't they? What's particularly mind-bending is this new trend of historical revisionism wrapped in a bow of both sides' rhetoric. We've gone from never forget to, well, maybe there were some good things faster than you can say constitutional crisis. The bar for presidential behavior has dropped so low it's practically a tripping hazard.
Recently, there was something else every president since World War II had in common. They all saw Adolf Hitler.
We're talking about a man who's apparently been collecting authoritarian trading cards like they're Pokemon. Gotta catch 'em all. From Kim Jong-un to Putin, with some vintage Hitler appreciation thrown in for good measure. The most surreal part? This isn't just some fringe political sideshow anymore. We're watching major political figures and entire party establishments either defending or tap dancing around statements that would have ended careers faster than a New York Minute just a few years ago. The political compass has gotten so twisted that basic statements like democracy is good and dictators are bad have somehow become controversial talking points. Let's take a moment to appreciate the spectacular irony of it all. For decades, American presidents have stood as symbols of democratic values, champions of human rights, and stern opponents of authoritarian regimes. Now we're witnessing what happens when that script gets flipped and thrown into a blender with a healthy dose of reality TV drama.
After 80 years of presidents who despise Nazism, Donald Trump became the first one to...
It's like watching a political version of The Twilight Zone, where the plot twist is that we're living in it. The real kicker is how this bizarre political theater has normalized the previously unthinkable. We've reached a point where expressing admiration for historical dictators barely raises eyebrows anymore. The news cycle has become so saturated with increasingly outrageous statements that we're practically numb to it. Remember when Kofefe was considered a major presidential gaffe? Those were the days. And yet, here we are, watching as the boundaries between political satire and reality become increasingly blurred.